Hey everyone, I'm Aaron. That's my identical twin brother, Adam. You're in a baseball brouhaha, which means we've got coffee, boom, and we're talking daily baseball trivia. Fracas, we're going to get into it today. Who knows? A brawl might break out between Adam and I. Not likely, but today might be the first. So, Adam, you got a question on deck for us.
Yeah,
What do we
well,
got?
this one's might take us round and round, you might say.
Round and
We're
round.
we're talking cycles. So today's question: which hitting for the cycle occurrence has happened least? So we're gonna have some options of kind of odd things that have happened for players who have hit for the cycle, and we're gonna figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is inspired by Luis Arias, who just recently hit for the cycle for the Miami Marlins. And this was the first cycle in Miami Marlins franchise history. More on cycle droughts later, but they've been a franchise for 30 years, and he hit the first one. So
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at some cycle trivia today. So our question today is which hitting for the cycle occurrence has happened least? So we have a Hall of Famer hit for the cycle, B, the natural cycle, so hitting them in order, single, double, triple, home run,
Mm-hmm.
players hitting for multiple cycles in their career, or D, the reverse cycle, home run, triple, double, single. What do you think?
Yeah, so I went here with so there's a few on here that I figured Hall of Famer. I actually didn't really know. I don't pay that close attention. I know they're somewhat rare, but I don't pay attention to like how this all unfolds um, year over year. And so I went natural cycle. The reverse or the natural. I feel like either one is wonky to do. Um, no particular. I mean, for me, it's flip a coin. So I went natural cycle.
I went reverse cycle on this one. Just it's similar to you. Like I was thinking that reverse natural, just hitting them in any sort of prescribed order is tough to
Hmm.
do.
Yeah.
Um, so let's take a look. Um, and we are one of us is correct, and that is me. The reverse cycle has happened 10 times. The natural cycle is close,
Yeah.
second at 15.
Hmm.
Um, Next is players hitting for multiple cycles, which has happened 36 times. And a Hall of Famer hitting for the cycle has happened 77 times by
Yeah.
65 different players.
Yeah. So, which we're going to talk about this a little bit here in a bit, but you figure getting a cycle means get 4 hits in a game. So generally, not always, but generally that means you're a pretty good player, and
Yeah.
so that's what we got. So.
Yeah. But when these happen, so sometimes players will hit for multiple cycles. So, as we just mentioned, this happened 36 times.
Hmm.
And sometimes they happen close together, and sometimes they don't. And so the shortest in between, John Riley, back in the day, have no
Hmm.
idea who this guy is, but he hit cycles 7 days apart from each other. Tip O'Neill, 8 days apart from each other.
Yeah.
Someone who's a little closer in our frame of reference, Aaron Hill,
Hmm.
hit two 11 days apart from each other, and then Christian Yelich, who's going to be come up again later in this show,
Yeah.
uh, hit two 18 days apart from each other. So that's wild occurrences there. As far as the longest distance between,
Hmm.
that's held by George Brett. He hit them 11 years apart from one another.
Yeah. So we're going to get to Christian Yelich more here in a bit. The second one that he hit in that little span happened on our birthday in 2018. So we'll talk
Oh,
about that. George Brett. This was an interesting one. So George Brett hit a second one in 1990 at the age of 37. And the thing that was funny reading about this is that it was in July of 1990. He got off to such a bad start in the year that he actually thought about retiring.
oh
Uh,
wow. I didn't know that.
He then gets hot in July, hits for the cycle at 37 years old, and goes on to win the batting title in that year.
What? No, that's wild. Oh,
So,
George Brett. Well, speaking of George Brett, he's a Hall of Famer and
yeah.
other Hall of Famers. So I used to think that cycles were somewhat fluky. And, thinking about this and looking at some of the stats behind this, I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, because as you mentioned, you got to get 4 hits.
Yeah.
Which is tough to do. You got to be a decent hitter. I mean, there's some players who they're pros. I mean, guys have their day. But 25% of cycles have been hit by Hall of Famers, and 35% of Hall of Fame position players who are batters hit a cycle in their career, which is just nuts to me. Thinking about
Okay.
how frequently this happened to Hall of Famers. And there are several current players who are likely Hall of Famers who've hit cycles. Mike Trout, Freddie Freeman, Nolan Arenado, Trey Turner, Shohei Ohtani, just to name a few.
Yeah. It's like I was thinking about this, and I agree with you in one regard, but there is sort of a flukiness to it as well. And we're going to talk about some of the fluky pieces to it. But one of them that came up for me was Dave Winfield hit a cycle, and honestly, I don't know if he hit multiple. I think he may have hit just one. But either way, Dave Winfield is the oldest player to hit for the cycle at age 39. Somebody else, 39 and 264 days, I think is the number. In 1991, playing for the Angels, and he ended up playing until he was age 43. But even George Brett at 37, after having a poor start to the season, going 10 years in between, they're Hall of Fame, they're good players, but and we're going to share some stories too. But you're right. It's more likely from a good player who gets more hits than other players, and is a combo of hits for average, hits for power. Like there's some combo in there as well. But looking at some of these stories is just like, it is just kind of bonkers how these come together. You have guys like Adrian Beltre hit 5 triples in his whole career with the Rangers in Arlington. Hit 5 triples, and 3 of them came in cycles. So it's like, there's some weird juju that happens with cycles.
Baseball brings out the best in quirky stats, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of more, quirky stats, so cycle droughts for teams. We're looking at teams now. So Luis Arias hit a triple for the Marlins. They had been 30 years since the start of their franchise. But that's not actually the longest drought. The next longest is the Royals, who George Brett, who just spoke about, hit the last one. But even longer drought than that is the Cincinnati Reds. Last happened by Eric Davis in 1989.
Yeah, so this one was fun looking at because we talked about Christian Yelich and we talked about the wackiness and the randomness that is cycles. Christian Yelich, he had those 2 cycles that you referenced that were 18 days apart, roughly.
Yeah.
And then in last year in 2022, he hit his 3rd cycle. So he's one of 6 players who's hit 3 cycles. For Christian Yelich, all of them have come against the Reds. How bizarre is that? And the Reds haven't hit a cycle since 1989. Christian Yelich was born in 1991. And so Christian Yelich has 3 cycles against the Reds, and the Reds have no cycles during Christian Yelich's lifetime.
How about that funky little situation there? That is wild. Well,
yes, funky story time. Funky story time.
Funky story time. Well, let's get it. So coming to you for funky story time for me is the only postseason cycle that has ever been hit, which was by Brock Holt of the 2018 Red Sox. He hit this in a 16-1 win in the ALDS against the Yankees in 2018. They went on to just cruise through the playoffs. They won 108 games that year, cruised through the playoffs, and won the World Series. But were later implicated in a sign stealing scandal a la Houston Astros in 2018. And manager Alex Cora was suspended for a year. If you need your Alex Cora trivia fix, hang with us. We got a video coming up in the next few days that'll feature Alex Cora.
Okay, well, I'm not even privy to this one, so that'll be exciting. So, my story time goes. We're talking more fluky cycles here. Mike Lansing for the 2000 Colorado Rockies, who played second base for the Rockies that year. And they had a game in which they beat the brakes off the old Diamondbacks, who actually both had a pretty good year that year. But a 19-2 win. Mike Lansing had hit for the cycle with a hit each one of the pieces of the cycle in each of the first 4 innings. So it went triple in the first inning, homer in the second, double in the third, and single in the fourth inning to follow it up, and was pulled later in the game. So he went 4 for 5 with the cycle. That was it.
Yeah, well, that's a good day right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us today. Thanks to MLB, Marlins, 3-0 Take for all the research information that we're pulling out here. If you have a question that you want us to discuss, drop it in the comments below. Find us on Twitter and add it there. Subscribe.